Through a combination of aspect ratio, composition, and pulling focus, the production team can draw your attention to what they want you to see. A great example of this is how Adam Kimmel directed the viewer's attention in Never Let Me Go. Kimmel uses the entire width of the 2.40 to 1 image to frame subjects, then uses a shallow depth of field to direct our attention from one subject to another, allowing for long, steady, dialogue-heavy shots that are still able to hold the attention of the viewer.
Why didn't Tommy get the ball?
Excuse me, Miss Lucy?
Why didn't Tommy get the ball? When it bounced over the fence, it couldn't have been far from him.
The fence is the boundary of the house and grounds. We don't go outside the boundary, Miss Lucy. It's too dangerous.
In the glass marksman scene in Skyfall, director of photography Roger Deakins uses the 2.40 to 1 image area to frame each and every character. From his long and steady tracking shots to sharp shots that frame characters in both the foreground and background, Deakins takes advantage of the entire imaging area, using it efficiently to paint his picture.
Let's see who ends up on top. Can't believe it. Did you really die that day? Is there any of the old 007 left?
Star Wars Episode 2 is also an interesting film to look at because of the way George Lucas attained the wide aspect ratio of 2.40 to 1. Episode 2 was the first cinematically presented film that was 100% captured through a digital imaging system, specifically the Sony CineAlta HDW F900. The final presentation of Star Wars Episode 2 only had a vertical resolution of 817 TV lines, because George Lucas cropped the image in order to obtain the scope aspect ratio. An HD TV news broadcast has a resolution of 1080 TV lines, but George Lucas felt that using that aspect ratio was important enough to crop the top and bottom off the footage he captured. Cinematic presentations weren't always so wide. As early as 1928, and being standardized by the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences in 1932, an aspect ratio of 1.375 to 1, more commonly known as 1.37 to 1 or 4 to 3, was used. This was the standard aspect ratio when images were captured on 4x 35mm film and married with audio for projection. One film that is a great example of this is George Cukor's 1938 film Holiday. This is a great example of how aspect ratio influences many things, specifically where actors stand, how the actors stand, and how the actors interact with each other. While you might not notice it while simply watching the film, it is almost unnatural. If we take a look at Skyfall, and the scene we saw earlier, everyone is more spaced out, and the wide aspect ratio allows everyone to be naturally placed and still be seen.
Chase, it strikes me you chose a strange time to tell us this. A very strange time.
Father.
Oh, I see, sir. Then perhaps...
Father, please go down. We'll come in a minute.
Before aspect ratios were standardized, and companies like MGM and Panavision had seemingly unlimited money, MGM and Panavision experimented with ultra-wide aspect ratios. In 1954, MGM and Panavision came together to start development on a new camera system, a camera known as both the MGM 65 and Ultra Panavision 70. From 1957 to 1966, a total of 10 films were made on this new system, yielding an aspect ratio of 2.76 to 1. To compete with Fox's Fox Grandeur system with an aspect ratio of 2.13 to 1. One of the most famous films ever was filmed on the MGM-65. Released in 1959, the 3-hour and 44-minute film Ben-Hur dazzled audiences with over 50,000 extras and 365 actors with speaking roles. Everything from the lenses to camera modifications to an already custom camera led to one of the most elaborate productions ever, receiving 12 Academy Award nominations and taking home 11. MGM and Panavision also received a special Technical Academy Award for the development and photographic process of the MGM-65, which was famous for its 2.76 aspect ratio. A side note, over 208 miles of 65mm film were used during the production of Ben-Hur. During the 60s, the battle for width was coming to an end. In 1963, Ted Moore decided to film a James Bond film, From Russia with Love, in a square aspect ratio of 1.66 to 1. Compared to Skyfall, we can clearly see a difference in character placement, framing, composition, and shooting style. The 2.40 aspect ratio in Skyfall allows us to take in beautifully designed landscapes, while the 1.66 aspect ratio lends to a more character-driven image. The 1964 Disney film Mary Poppins was also filmed in an aspect ratio of 1.66, but this decision was more of a technically driven one, with Disney using a retired Technicolor camera that was modified for use in the sodium vapor process so that adding in animated characters and backgrounds would be easier in post-production. Modern cinematographers that want width but don't want to go as wide as 2.40 to 1 typically use an aspect ratio of 1.85 to 1. This allows them to photograph settings but also keep the film character driven, as this aspect ratio is better for films with lots of close-ups. A great example of this is Neil Blomkamp's 2009 film District 9, which is filmed in a faux documentary cinema verite style, with lots of close-ups, but also lots of wide shots.
See what's happening? First Battalion, my friend, you know what that means? That means that your days of flaunting the law are over. Have a look there. You see that? What's that? That's a hiding for you. That's a hiding.
Catherine Bigelow's 2008 film, The Hurt Locker, is also filmed in the same style, a documentary style to really bring the viewer into the action of combat in Iraq. The 1.85 to 1 aspect ratio is excellent at bringing viewers into the action because of the combination of being character driven, but also allowing less awkward close-ups of actions, characters, and close-ups of establishing shots. While one person might say one aspect ratio is better than another, the truth is aspect ratio doesn't matter if the film lacks content, plot, and story. I hope this film was informative and helped you consider another aspect when analyzing film and media.